And it's now 3 months since Kenya was invaded by desert locusts, the worst invasion in 70 years and a plague of biblical proportions. At least 20 counties in Kenya have now been affected, and experts warn that the whole country remains at risk if control measures are not swift. As the country prepares for the onset of the long rains this March, experts warn of an impending food crisis. Zainab Wandati has more.
Laisamis, Marsabit County. Locust nymphs emerge from the ground, wingless, hungry, hopping. Since they're too young to fly, they move close to the ground like an army marching to war, following the smell of sprouting vegetation. This is the second generation of desert locusts, the first to be hatched on Kenyan soil. In the just few days that these nymphs have been alive, the vegetation is already feeling the pressure, the half-eaten leaves silently crying out to the wind.
Unfortunately for us, the locust has overstayed in the county and they have completed the complete cycle. Laisamis and North Horr sub-counties are now battling the nymphs.
The desperation on these herders' faces is evident. Their livelihood is at risk. If these nymphs don't die soon, then the livestock will have nothing to eat and die of starvation.
Marsabit County is a livestock based with 81% of the livelihood depending on the livestock. And the browses, the trees majorly affected are acacia species, balanitis species, salvadora species, and the pasture in totality.
At least 20 counties have been invaded so far and vast areas of vegetation destroyed, leaving farmers staring at losses.
Tukashindwa, kwani serikali, kazi ya serikali gani? Hizi mmea zinakula ndio tunategemea kwa miaka kama 2 ama 3.
Wanafamia kila mahali, nyasi wanakula. Sasa tunashindwa, ng'ombe zitakuwa zinakula nini? Na hii ni eneo la kiangazi, wakati tunategemea mvua. Sasa wakikula hii nyasi tumepewa na Mungu, tutafanya namna gani?
Locust nymphs are known as hoppers. They remain in this stage for at least 4 weeks before they flap their wings and take to the skies.
Tiny wingless insect that does not fly, and what it does is that it moves in, it hops in. That's why it's called a hopper. It hops in large number. And it destroys all the vegetation along its route.
Fueling the invasion is a bounty of vegetation resulting from the heavy rains in the last few months, and experts warn that the problem is about to get a lot worse with the long rains in the horizon.
Locusts are moving very fast. Our scientists are clear that locusts can move up to 150 kilometers per day. And you can imagine the extent, or the area they can cover within a specific day. And they eat quite a lot. They eat food that can actually, one swarm is known to eat food that can actually feed over 35,000 people. So picture that.
The Food and Agriculture Organization has set up a multi-agency team to look into the impact on food security and present a report in the next 1 month. The National Drought Management Authority is also working on a report with some of the affected counties and released a preliminary report to those counties.
On cropland, it was realized that at the time of the damage, at the time of the invasion, the crops were in maturity stage. So the damage or the losses on crops were limited at 5%.
Locusts are actually special kinds of grasshoppers known to migrate in swarms. Around 20 of the 7,000 known grasshopper species transform themselves into what is known as a gregarious phenotype, which means that they physically change their bodies as they socialize. And at this point, they change color and grow bigger muscles as they gather into massive clouds known as swarms.
That might have something to do with the dry environment that this species call home. Desert locusts only lay eggs in moist soil to keep them from drying out. And when heavy rains come in to saturate the desert, locusts breed and fill the soil with their eggs.
The females, when they have mated and ready to lay eggs, they will identify the soil that is soaked, that they can penetrate using their abdomen. When there is no wet soil, they will not lay their egg.
So by the end of maybe June, we shall be having almost over 60,000 hectares affected of pasture and the browses. And the impact in the next coming season on croplands is going to be greater.
A lot of resources have already been put into controlling the insects through spraying, but concerns have been raised over the quality of pesticides and impact on human health.
When the spraying is being done, we are told to advocate for children not being close to areas that have been sprayed, because they can easily inhale the chemicals, and this can cause long-term problems in future.
The first wave is really largely done. What we are now focusing on, and the biggest danger, is those locusts that survived and laid eggs. And some could even also be laying now, because they came different times.
The government has now enlisted the services of the National Youth Service to target breeding grounds and contain the pests.
Tulikuwa tunadhania hii msimu wa mvua hatutapata kitu kwa sababu nzige walikuwa wengi sana, lakini kulingana na serikali ya kaunti na serikali kuu, kulingana na vile wameshirikiana, tunaona hii msimu unafuata, huu unakuja, tayari umeanza. Tutapana, tutafuna kwa sababu tayari nzige wameanza kuangamizwa. Sasa ukiingia kwa vichaka wameisha wanasindi kuisha.
It's been a serious problem. We have done everything that we can do. We strongly believe, though, that as a result of some of the mitigation that we have done, the damage to our harvest may not be as bad as it was predicted.
Scientists have linked the invasion to climate change and the warming of the Indian Ocean, which has affected wind patterns. Swarms follow the flow of the wind, and thus areas of low pressure and rain. And once vegetation is wiped away, the steady roar of the locust wings will be replaced with nothing but the sound of the wind, until the cycle begins again when fresh nymphs are hatched. Zainab Wandati, NTV.